Apologies for the background noise. Your boy doesn't have a studio, so it's just in the house as always. So going into the main story, COVID 16,000 cases missed in daily figures after IT error. So we'll talk about some of the IT stuff in a minute and some of the issues, but we'll talk about this is what's going on as this is the main event, I guess. Um, it's my cat as well. A technical glitch that meant that nearly 16,000 cases of coronavirus went unreported has delayed efforts to trace contacts of people who tested positive. Public Health England said 15,841 cases between the 25th of September and 2nd October were left out of the UK's official figures. And if we look at these figures now, I don't know when the FT's updated them. I'm hoping that these are the updated figures for all of the unreported cases, because if they're not, we're in trouble. Because if you look here, I think they've just updated it now, and if you look here, we are heading to be the worst country getting hit with a second wave here. Because if you look at the EU 27 here, this is the average in the European Union. Spain, they look like they're flattening their curve. Ours is not flattening. Portugal doing well. Obviously, depends on how you're testing, how much you're testing, and things like that. But it's not looking positive. Last I saw from the UK, the figures were just above the European Union. So I think these must be the up with the new figures. So shout out to the FT for doing that and making that article free. So going back to this. They were then added to, so it's talking about the coronavirus figures. They were then added to reach Saturday's figure of 12,872 new cases and Sunday's 22,961 figure. Public Health England and all those who have tested positive have been informed, but it means others in close contact were not. So, say for example, if I had COVID and they just found out, then they haven't been able to tell the people I've been in contact with, essentially. Essentially saying that they might have coronavirus. So the issue has been resolved. Public Health England said, with outstanding cases passed on to tracers. On Saturday, the technical issue also means that the daily totals reported on the government's coronavirus dashboard over the past week have been lower than the true number. So this is not the government lying, as far as I know. This is incompetency. Labour have described this as shambolic. I agree with 100% with that. It is shambolic. The BBC has told by senior public health officials in the northwest of England that a significant proportion of the unreported cases are from the area. Cities such as Liverpool, Manchester are already amongst the highest infection rates in the country. BBC analysis found that the number of cases reported for the week to 1st of October has increased by 92.6% in the northwest after taking in the missing tests, with similar rises across England. And so what we can see here is we are well and truly heading into a second wave throughout the country, and there's a lower chance of a national lockdown, considering that Rishi Sunak is reluctant to do essentially a furlough 2.0 scheme with the original basically furlough scheme in play. And if you listen to what Boris Johnson's actually said here, it's not looking too positive.
Some of the data it got truncated and it was lost, but what they've done now is not only contacted all the people who were identified as having the disease. I mean, that was done in the first place, but they're now working through all the contacts as well. And the key thing I would say is that, and it goes for everybody, is that if you're contacted by NHS Test and Trace, then you must self-isolate.
So if you've been come into contact with someone with coronavirus, even if you don't have symptoms, he's saying you need to self-isolate, which is a scary thought, because you might not have it, and you might be in a case where you're sort of near someone who has contracted coronavirus multiple different times with different people, and therefore you have to self-isolate, and that's really going to mess up your life, because you're going to be losing a lot of money through. If you're working, your life is going to be constantly derailed when you may not have the coronavirus. And instead of having more tests available, the government strategy is saying that if you're in contact with someone with coronavirus, you have to self-isolate without knowing if you have the illness. So it's a very stupid system.
If you're told you've been in contact with somebody who has the virus, you must self-isolate. There is support of £500 for doing so, and of course a £10,000 fine if you don't.
£500 for 2 weeks. That's embarrassing. So if we look at the rest of the article here, Prime Minister Boris Johnson said the data had been truncated and lost, but added all the people who had tested positive had been contacted, and the tracers were now working through all the contacts. And the scientists said within 48 hours this has to be done, otherwise it's going to lose its effectiveness. And the thing is, we know that this hasn't been done, because this was over the weekend. Saturday, and so they've run out of time basically. I think. Meanwhile, in the head of the government's vaccine task force, Kate Bingham, has told the Financial Times that less than half of the UK's population could be vaccinated against the coronavirus. So they won't get the right numbers for this. Is legit herd immunity. This is the better kind, where you get a certain amount of people vaccinated against the illness. That's the good kind of herd immunity, not the kind of we're going to let it run rampant and then whoever, if you die, you die. The Ivan Drago strategy. So there's that. So there's going to be no vaccinations of people under 18. She said it's an adult only vaccine for people over 50, focusing on health workers, care home workers, and the vulnerable. Miss Johnson, it could be a bumpy Christmas and beyond as the UK deals with the virus. I agree 100%. It's going to be grim. In an interview with The Sun, Sunak has defended his Eat Out to Help Out scheme, saying he had no regrets after suggesting it may have helped to fuel the second wave of the coronavirus. Probably did, to be fair. I wouldn't be surprised. So we got some Hugh Pym analysis. At a time when testing has come under intense scrutiny after reports of delays and a system struggling to keep up with demand, the latest revelation could not have come at a more awkward time for the government at Westminster. And this is one of the reasons why they're focusing on the so-called immigrant crisis, because it's a dead cat. It's a dead cat to distract people from this, because this is the real problem here. You got more chance of catching coronavirus than you do of getting, your life impacted by an illegal immigrant, because their lives are very limited in what they can actually do under the law. So because the nearly 16,000 extra positive cases results have not been entered into the test and trace system, their recent contacts were not immediately followed up. So that's the 48-hour thing. Officials say the technical problem, thought to be IT related, has been resolved, with all new cases added into totals reported over the weekend. And so we'll get to the technical issues in a minute. Once we're done with the article. On Sunday, the government's coronavirus dashboard said, as of 9 p.m, it must be 9 a.m. BST, that there have been a further 22,968 lab-confirmed cases of coronavirus in the UK, bringing the total to over 500,000. So what you can see from this is the fact that the capacity is still an issue here, and they're just getting processing. They've just processed these results, and the longer the results take to process, the more it impacts people, because the more your life is put on hold. Because if say you get a test, it takes 4 or 5 days for you to get the result. You're stuck at home for those 4 or 5 days, ideally, unless you're the MP from the SNP MP who thinks you can go around lollygagging and infecting other people. So Public Health England intern chief executive Michael Brodie said a technical issue was identified. So this is all the same stuff. So you can see the numbers here, how much they've had to add on here. So 4,786 in one day, 4,133 in another day, 28th of September. So it looks like they actually had a good day and they didn't have excess cases. But you can see here, that's an anomaly really, out of the days they have in that week. So we've got some more analysis from James Gallagher. So the BBC really going hard on this interview, this article. There have been clear problems with the government track and trace data, but they do not change our view on the UK's trajectory. Cases surged at the beginning of September. They may still be climbing, but not as quickly as anticipated just a few weeks ago. The perspective comes from three key sets of data: the ONS, the REACT study by Imperial College London, and the COVID symptom tracker app. None are blighted by the current issues and the test and trace data, or by people struggling to access tests. The real fallout of the weekend's statistical chaos is not the numbers, but the people who should have been contact traced, told to quarantine, but instead may have been unwittingly passed on the virus. So what he's saying, the issue isn't just the issue really isn't the tests, or the lack of processing, from what I've read, but basically he's saying that because they haven't actually managed to contact the people that have come into contact with people potentially with coronavirus, and there's the spread there. That's how easily it can spread without these people knowing that potentially they have coronavirus. Also, the fact that they may not be able to get tests is going to cause massive problems throughout the country. So Labour's Shadow Health Secretary Jonathan Ashworth said this is shambolic, and people across the country will be understandably alarmed. I don't think people are that are going to actually hear about the study. I don't think they'll care too much. He called Health Secretary Matt Hancock to explain what on earth has happened and what he's going to do to what he plans to do to fix track. I keep saying that word. I can't figure out how to say it now. Test and trace. He's going to have no answers. Hancock is due to appear to on Monday about the coronavirus. I'm losing my ability to read. Bridget Phillipson, Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, told BBC Breakfast she wanted to know if it had any impact on government decision making around local restrictions. Obviously, it would have done if the government thought the numbers are lower than they actually are, considering they just found this out on I think Saturday. So obviously that's a stupid question. PHE data England shows that Manchester now has the highest rate of infection in England at 495.6 cases per 100,000 in the week to October 1st, from 223 the week before. and so you can tell it's rising very quickly, and that's a scary thing. Liverpool has the second highest rate, up to 456.4 from 287.1 per 100,000. And so if this keeps spreading here, these cities will have local lockdowns, and that's going to really damage the people there, both health-wise, mentally as well, and also business-wise as well. And without a furlough 2.0 scheme, I am very concerned to think what's going to happen in these places. So the government said the technical issue meant that some cases during the week were not recorded at the time, so we're included in Saturday's data. The daily total rose from 4,044 on Monday to a then high 7,143 on Tuesday. However, over the next 4 days, the total remained stable at a time when continued increases might have been expected. Then came the big leap in numbers, and so what we can tell from this is if the government don't actually know what the numbers are, then that's going to cause them problems with actually planning what to do around coronavirus and lockdowns. It makes them look more it makes their actions look more not pedantic, but more scattergun, where they have no idea what they're doing. One day, they could say we're going to lower the lockdown in this area, then they get the true numbers, they're like, oh no, we can't do that, and you just look very stupid, especially with basic IT systems like this. And if we look at what Dr. Kana said about this, she goes, the world-beating Circo test and trace system, which it is, by the way, is being run on Excel instead of on database software, which has caused the latest issue. So this BTEC system, this world-beating system, is being run on Excel, which is great but limited in some ways, and should be run on proper database software where you can actually do better modeling. Excel is decent, but not the best when it comes to this stuff. And she makes a joke about next they'll tell us it's run on Windows 95 and they'll manually back up the data on floppy disks each night. It's pretty embarrassing, this whole thing, and they've done this so they can give their buddies at Serco money, and it's just not ended well. And so much for the private sector doing a good job, especially when you give those contracts to your mates instead of companies that actually know what they're doing. But I've rambled on long enough. What we can tell from this is the fact that the COVID numbers were inaccurate, and they've had to massively up the numbers. As we can see here, we're going to become the kings of COVID per capita, not looking too positive for us. The government actually still have no idea what they're doing. And Matt Hancock saying that he's going to fix, test and trace and all this stuff, and all these issues are going to go, just not happening. And so I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.